Blessings to all, and welcome to another episode of Elevate the Mic. And I'm your host, Max Mupese. Today, we have a cultural curator, not only somebody who has a lot of respect in the city of Montreal, but I would say across North America, and the one and only Rito Joseph. How you doing, Rito?
Yo, I'm good, man. Thanks a lot, my brother, man.
100%,
Yeah,
man.
thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. So, how you feeling, man? How's everything on your end?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Working on a few projects here and there. Staying productive, staying active. But other than that, really, I feel blessed.
Got
Really,
it.
yeah, I feel blessed to be doing what I want. How I want it, and yeah,
Got it. As long as you stay thankful for what you have, that's
grateful.
That's
Yeah.
it. Appreciate that. That's good. Now, anybody who's watching this for the first time does not necessarily know, okay, what does a cultural curator has to do with Elevate the Mic, the show that we got going on. What people need to understand is that you also have history in music, right? Could you tell us a little bit more about your early beginnings in music?
Oh yeah, well, I was part of this, rap group that was called 40 East.
Okay.
And I was I was more of a producer, beat maker. So, I like to chop samples. I like to, play with different BPMs. And so I produced here and there, locally. I work with different artists, some artists from my neighborhood, like, Gizzo, Biggs, Below the Kid.
Yeah, shout out to Below.
Yeah, Sajid, and then, I just tagged the some. And then I produced, I worked also a little, spent some time working with a few artists outside of Canada as well, TC Lucchini in Philly and Young Dirt in North Carolina. But that was a moment in my life that, and I'm DJing in nightclubs as well at Saint-Sulpice. I was a DJ at Saint-Sulpice at some point. And that was a moment. I started out in music. It started at home. My mother used to sing in churches, so at church she'd sing, and then my brothers, they're musicians, so they would play, the background, and that's how I really got to, be immersed in music.
Got it.
Yeah.
Perfect. And you grew up in Saint Michel, if I'm not mistaken? Got it.
Yeah. I'm born and raised in Saint Michel.
Yes.
Yeah.
How was it? How was it growing up there? We had a good discussion about basketball. Those times was amazing.
Oh man, listen, man, growing up in Saint Michel back in those days, back in the 90s, 90s, early 2000s, it was something, man. It's surrounded by community, surrounded by communities, surrounded by church, surrounded by ball players, surrounded by, just a lot of familiar faces, places, and then I just felt safe within the environment because, I had people I could rely on. I had friends in the neighborhoods. I had family members. Some of my aunties and cousins lived there, and just friends that I had since elementary school that I still have till this day.
Right.
And like you said, man, we also started to play ball together back in those days. Yeah.
Got it. One thing I noticed about Saint Michel is that it's almost like the California effect. What I mean by that is don't get misconstrued or don't get deceived by the looks. Like there's duplexes, everything looks clean and good until you step in the wrong neighborhood and something might happen. But it's not always the case, it's just certain environments are like that, even NDG for the most part.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Yeah.
That's good. So what's a lesson that you keep till this day growing up in Saint Michel that shaped your character for the most part?
A lesson that I keep from growing up in Saint Michel is definitely don't judge a book by its cover, right? And I say don't judge a book by its cover because back in the days, we had a lot of, repression. We had a lot of, racial profiling, and I think at times it almost felt like, it felt like they had some sort of, predestined future for you. So you had to make sure that, you didn't fall into someone else's plan. So you had to stick to what you know, but in order for you to stick to what you know, you also had to, understand who you wanted to be within the environment. And I think also understanding sometimes who you want to be, it has to do with what people project on you. And I say don't judge a book by its cover because, no matter what people think of you, you still have to go on. You still have to keep it moving. You have to move forward. And I think back in those days, I really felt like, okay, if I know who I want to be within this world, because I'm not saying I did, but if I know who I want to be within this world, I think I could be unstoppable. Yeah. But back then I didn't really know what I wanted to be, so I didn't feel like I could be unstoppable, but deep down, it felt like, I had a light that I didn't want to let anyone dim, So
Amazing, and it's working well so far.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying, man.
That's
I'm
it.
trying.
It's working well. I've heard you quote once you said, "Basketball and hip hop made you fall in love with history."
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, basketball and hip hop. Why is that? That's like, okay. You did your research. I like that. I started out as student of the game, right? A student of the game. So as a student of the game, my older god brother, shout out Basler. My older god brother used to bring us VHS cassettes, tapes. Exactly,
Doesn't
and
work.
we used to watch them, and then I remember some of the first, dunk contests I watched. It'd be, Michael Jordan against, Dominique Wilkins, '88.
Okay.
So I started out watching the old stuff, and then I became intrigued as to, okay, how far can I take this back? So I was always intrigued. So I started to go down a rabbit hole. We used to watch Dr. J. We used to watch Bernard King. And so that's how I became. I was interested in researching the past when it came to basketball, and with hip hop, it was really about the samples that producers use. Because at times it's like, oh, this sounds familiar, so I don't know if they replayed the same notes or they really chopped it. And I got introduced to making beats in the early 2000s, and then I really started to want to know more about how to sample, why they use the sample, and also taking it back, kind of like the African concept of Sankofa.
Right. Yeah.
You take it back and you bring it forward. So that's how it felt, and also I could say to a certain extent maybe a little bit of wrestling too. WWF.
Yeah. Triple H and all of them.
All of that. So yeah, so it got me interested in researching about the past, researching about just events that shape whether it's a culture or industry, and then why people do the things that they do, or why they think how they think.
And for anybody who's watching this and wants to know, what does a cultural curator does? How would you define it? Like, what does a cultural curator do exactly?
This is a good question. Cultural curator. So for me, culture, curate. I curate culture. So I use history as my canvas. I revisit. I chronicle the presence of people of African descent throughout the world. But, for the past few years, I put a lot of emphasis on Montreal, Quebec, Canada, because, this is where we're from. We live here, so we need to understand about, our history here as people of African descent. And I use it at, history but through different vehicles, right? Whether it be, I do historical walking tours in different neighborhoods of Montreal, Old Montreal, Little Burgundy, and Côte d'Ivoire, and Montreal Nord, Hochelaga, etc. Also, I do workshops, where, I engage in cultural identity as well, with young people in different schools. I also do conferences, conferences in terms of, past history, from the 1600s here in Canada, maybe even prior to. When you look at Africa, you look at different parts of the world. Also, and now I've stepped into art, I as an art curator, so really working with different artists, working with, artists to come up with some sort of artwork that represents the essence of what I'm trying to convey as a message. So that's
powerful.
It's not a simple answer, but amongst other things, that's what I do.
And it goes into also like the essence of hip hop,
as well. Always, I'm like, listen, man, I still remember the first hip hop video I saw, and it definitely goes into that essence for sure.
That's it.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about one of your most aha moments when you started doing it, like which was doing those tours or even workshops, an aha moment that made you realize, okay, you knew you had that light in you, however, it just took that moment to kept things moving to another level?
One of the moments where I think would be where, I started to, I don't know, man, it's going to sound crazy, but I started to get, recognition from people here. Because at first, when I started the tours, it mainly be for tourists, people that came from out of town. And then, one day, I think I got approached by a journalist, someone that, and then a tour was organized, and then the person wrote an article about me, and then one thing led to another. I got approached by, different entities, groups, I do like walking tours for schools, for corporations, and, the community organizations and so on. And I think it started to highlight not just the work that I do, but also the people that I'm trying to put at the forefront. So I really felt like, okay, there's a space for us to exist, not only, as, regular civilians, but also as, the people with it in history here. And I think at times this is the hardest part, to have a sense of belonging in the city at times, is because where do you belong except for, just working, paying your bills, and being part of the machine. And I think that as being we're all part of the machine to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But I wanted to exist beyond that understanding. And I think history gave me a platform to showcase what took place with our people here centuries ago. And then the fact that it started to get recognition here in the different parts of not just Canada, but also in North America and Western society, I was like, okay, there's something to be done here, and I just got to keep pushing forward. Yeah.
If there was a story that you'd like the people to know about that impacted your life till this day, because there's going to be many stories that you're going to learn about, but which story would you say is a story you would like to share right now?
About me or
about what you've read in history?
Oh, what I read in history.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I read so many things. I read a lot of things. Hold on. That impacted my life, about what I read in history. And it would be the story. It would be about Claudia Jones. So Claudia Jones, she is an activist. She's a Trinidadian descent. She's Trinidadian. She's born in Trinidad. She grew up in Harlem. She was deported from the United States for having ties with the Communist Party, and afterwards she ended up in the UK.
Oh.
And she arrived in the UK in the 50s, with a lot of, I think, late 40s or early 50s, with a lot of racial tensions.
Right.
And at a time when people like black people from the Windrush generation that had arrived after World War II in the UK were getting beat up and getting harassed, and and then listen, at some point it was a racial riot, so a lot of white folks starting to beat up on black people in the Notting Hill area. And she was like, man, listen, man, we're not just going to be victims to this racist system, so we're going to stand up. And you know what, in order to be visible, because we have to be visible, we're here to stay.
Right.
She founded the Notting Hill Carnival.
You serious?
Yeah, that's how it started. It started after, getting harassed, racial tension. Powerful, and she said, she had a quote that says, art is the genesis of a people's culture. Right? So look up Claudia Jones, man. She was really a badass.
Claudia Jones.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Okay, so let's just say you would have to look at how you were able to accomplish certain things in your life at this very moment. What moment made you realize, okay, you know what? I have a lot more than I thought I had, and kept you going. Yes.
Okay, I think, this is a good question. Okay, I get it. I think it's when I went to Africa. I visited Ghana. I went to the All African People's Conference, and then, I stood up to, I was accompanied by my good friend Sam, Samuel, shout out, and then we went there, and we wanted to explore. We wanted to create links. We wanted to, get in tune with, not just, the culture, the history, but also the people, doing the work on the field, et cetera, on the ground there. And, at some point it felt like, we needed to express, like the state of, people of African descent outside of Africa, and what's going on out there in North America. And then I think, it really, the fact that, it was not chaotic, but the fact that, at some point people just, started to listen, and they felt like, okay, he's doing something, he's like saying something that I'm like, in order for us to move forward as a unit, as a people, we need to have a certain understanding of, the multi-layers, of our, community. And then, I don't know, man, that really gave me some sort of boost when I got to be interviewed on TV there. I got to go on radio. I got to also spread a message of, awareness and, love and unity as well. So that was really one of my biggest highlights.
That's good. It's in a way, what I understand is like, you were able to enhance their perspective too, because you got them to understand that, okay, it's not only what's happening in Africa, you got to look outside of it.
As well.
North America, that's important.
As well, to not to sound selfish, but to say like, we are, each other's missing links, and That's something that needs to be said more than it needs to be understood. We understand it, but we don't always take time to verbalize it. You see what I mean?
Speaking of missing link, what would you say is a current missing link in the hip hop community right now in Montreal?
Current missing link in the hip hop community right now in Montreal, I would say that we're not exporting our local culture. Do you see what I mean? When you look at, the different eras, you look at the different cities that blew up, it has to do with, being able to export, with the culture, with the local culture. If you want to make it mainstream,
Right.
you will have to know how to, export it elsewhere.
Yeah.
In Montreal, we have a lot of different intersections, as well as the European market, the French-speaking European market, the North American market. But we have yet to really find a formula to really export. And I say export Montreal culture, it has to do with slangs, it has to do with the way you talk, the way you dress, it has to do with how you portray yourself, it has to do with day-to-day life. You see how, for example, in the 90s when you had the wave of West Coast, or
Yes.
early 2000s when the South came, like East Coast New York, or even Toronto recently too. A lot of people are
Yeah.
using Toronto slang,
Yeah, that's a good
It's
point.
like,
Yeah.
are you dumb and all that stuff. So I think we have yet to have we have yet to have a moment where it's like, oh, who are these people and why do they talk like that? Why do they sound like that? We've had that with different. Even right now, look at UK drill.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, they're doing it.
They
They're really
at
doing it.
first you could tell that they try to sound American, but it didn't really work for them because it's like it felt like they might have been faking the funk, and now it's like, but not to say they were faking, but we to a certain extent all influenced by New York and the East Coast.
Yeah.
And look at now.
It's authentic.
It's
themselves.
authentic. It
Yeah.
sounds like them. It feels like them, and you can feel it. That that's how we talk. That's who we are. It doesn't matter if it sounds weird to you. That's us. We're comfortable being us. And I think right now we have a lot of talent in the city. I think for me, I really believe that we're one of the most talented cities, but we have yet to really export the culture through the art. Yes, we do it in different ways. We have a lot of artists, but in terms of hip hop, we have a lot of great producers. Like I'm talking about
Yes.
A-list producers, like Nicholas Craven, K.
Chanada.
Chanada, what Dirt Work and High Classified,
Classified,
so
yeah.
it's nothing to be played with. But in terms of having an artist at the forefront, we have yet to have one hip hop artist that's really pushing the local culture. And when I say pushing local culture, it doesn't mean that, I have to go out there and rep Montreal. It means that, when you go out there, you're different because you're not trying to copy a vibe that you're not from. So that's what makes you different. You're authentic to who you are. And being authentic to who you are doesn't mean that you have to be close to, you have to have a ton of vision towards the other things. It means that, if you go in a crowd and then we've never heard someone from, I don't know, Montreal, and you spit something, what makes it feel authentic? What makes it feel different than, what the rest of the cats out there are doing? I think that's like culture. For me, I think we have yet to know how to export culture through hip hop.
Why do you think that? Why do you think we're not able to? Do you think there's lack of communication, lack of collaboration? Or, 'cause
Well, it's a complicated
It's always
city.
like the French and the English, they're not together, and then we see that, okay, things are happening. Stop. Things are happening. Stop.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's a complicated city, right? It's a complicated province, in terms of everything is complicated here. You'd have to be here to experience it.
right.
If you move to Montreal and you live downtown, you may never experience what I'm talking about. But it's a complicated city in terms of, the ethno-linguistic divide, like you said, in terms of also the multi-layers of, the culture or identity here. And also, we have yet to really define, we don't really need to define it, but we have yet to really define how we see ourselves as Montrealers. We don't really have, many things that all of us can revolve around as, as one, to say the least.
Right.
But it goes beyond that because we have, provincial politics, we have versus federal politics,
Right.
and Canada versus Quebec, Montreal versus Quebec.
Right.
Montreal is an island, literally. Because when you're in Montreal, you're not in Quebec or Canada, you're in Montreal. It sounds crazy,
Layers,
but it's a lot of
man. You're
layers.
just peeling
you
it
see?
off.
So then, we have a genre that's not all the way backed up by its province.
Right.
And then people within the city, I don't know how much they know about also local hip hop, so that has to do too. And it's, again, we talk about the English. If you speak English here, it's almost like you're an outsider. I'm bilingual. I operate on the French and English side, and I see it, you know. So this is also in terms of business, you know, having an understanding of how we want to, you know, how we want to bring business here, you know, how we want businesses to operate here in terms of, okay, are you different because your business is in English and my business is in French, or vice versa?
Right.
And I think all of that reflects itself within the hip hop scene.
That's a beautiful answer, man.
Yeah.
It's like it's really layers upon layers, and you have to dissect it and really understand the root of it all.
That's it. That's it.
Because politics is everywhere at the end of the day, right?
Especially in Quebec.
Could you share a story or a moment that had to do with you overcoming certain political issues or certain obstacles that you had to deal with ever since you started your business?
It's a good question, man. Well, one day I was doing a tour, and then I had received one of the French-speaking, you know, journalists from you know, CBC, Radio Canada.
Okay, yeah.
You know, she came on my tour, and then at some point, you know, while I was, you know, doing a tour in Old Montreal, and you know, I was showcasing, explaining some of the history. She you know, she raised her hand to ask a question, and as she, you know, raised, you know, her hand, I was like, yes, and then she tried to tell me what I'm saying is lies.
Okay.
And yeah, so, you know, I kept it cool, but I had to, you know, speak truth to power. You know, it's like, I'm like, don't you ever dare calling me a liar. You know, this has nothing to do with, you know, how you feel. This is history, and but the fact that, you know, I stopped the tour and I regulated her in front of everyone, I think that also, you know, it made people feel like, okay, he really stands by, you know, what he does and, you know, what he says, because, you know, these people have ways, you know, of, you know, trying to make you feel uncomfortable for, you know, sharing what you consider truth or what you consider an historical fact. And for me, one of the reasons,
seem a bit condescending.
A bit condescending, and also in terms of, you know, don't you dare calling me a liar, because what it's public domain, what I'm sharing. It's not, you know, secret information. It could feel like it could be secret because, you know, it's not things that we learn in school. But no, it was just the fact that, and afterwards, you know, to at least, you know, in a respectful way afterwards, she apologized, you know, and then, you know, weeks later, she, you know, called me to say I apologize. I went to check with my friends that are teachers, and they didn't know either. And I'm like, now I'm confused and trying to understand how come we don't teach this in schools. And I'm like, okay. So she invited me on her show to, you know.
Okay, full circle moment.
Full circle, but because I stood on business, I was like, listen, I'm like, it's okay if you disagree. It's okay if you have questions, but don't ever call me. You can disagree without calling me a liar, because that, especially not in front of, you know, 20, 30 strangers who are like, oh my God, is it lies? So, yeah, so that would be one of those moments.
Yeah, trying to assassinate your character in a way in front of the public.
That's it.
One thing I like about you is that you're unapologetic about what you believe. Like, you really stand on what you stand on. Where does that come from, would you say? Like, is it not only the environment you grew up in, or is just other experiences in life?
I think it's you know, it's multiple things, right? You know, it takes a village, right? So, you know, like kind of like Saint Michel with that village, you know, for me, it was really the village. So I think I got that from, you know, just being out there and allowing myself to, you know, learn as well, because, you know, everything that I talk about is things that I learn, that I read, you know. I try to, you know, at least, you know, read minimum 1 book a month. If I could read more, I read more. So it's minimum 12 books a year. So I'm confident in what I talk about because that's what I know. And when I don't know something, I let it be known. I'm not sure about that. But the confidence also comes from the fact that, you know, we're rooted in our, you know, I'm rooted in the ancestors' work, you know. So they walk with me, you know. They walk with me. They give me the confidence to do what I do, to be who I want to be, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
To
That's
walk
powerful.
in different neighborhoods, to, you know, approach different people, and in a respectful way, always respectful. But yeah.
Got it. I want to ask you this. We just witnessed probably one of the best hip-hop battles of all time, people like to say.
Okay, yeah.
Debatable. That's debatable. When you see Kendrick versus Drake, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Do you think that it helps or hinders the culture, or is it a distraction?
Oh, it's a little bit of all three. You mentioned it's a little bit of all three. It's a little bit of all three. It definitely when I saw Kendrick versus Drake,
Yeah.
I saw I think they had different approaches.
Mm.
I think Drake's approach would have been like, I have better numbers than you.
Mm.
I think Kendrick's approach would have been like, yeah, I'm from within the culture.
Mm.
You don't understand that. You wouldn't understand that.
Mm.
And I think that's how Kendrick got to be on top.
Mm.
But I think Drake is also like, he's a juggernaut. So it's not something that you can just kill and then just, go on about your day. So he's going to have multiple hits. But I think there's something to be said about the fact that how relevant are numbers when it comes to, the culture being relatable. I think it's a nature versus nurture type of conversation, and is it a distraction? Always. It's always a distraction because there are multiple things happening, in Congo, in Haiti, in Sudan, in Palestine, and, all over the world, really. And we need to be aware of that because, even though it's miles away, kilometers away, it will affect us in one way or another. So it's definitely a distraction. However, it's also good to witness the that kind of battles. I think people are saying that not like us, they not like us. It's like
Right.
one of the best diss tracks ever.
Right.
Well, yeah, it's a dope song. It got the West back on their feet though. That's for
it.
sure.
That's
That's for sure. Like, and not just the West. Now the world is like.
That's it. They're waiting on it. Like,
yeah,
okay, give us
yeah,
more, Kendrick.
Yeah,
Give us more.
give us more. So for sure. And I think Kendrick's approach as opposed to Drake, it was both of them for me. It felt like it was a bit too personal though.
Yeah.
It was very personal.
Yeah.
But I think Drake lost when he said, when he said to me, in my opinion, when he said, you sound like you want to free the slaves, you're a fake
Right.
activist. But someone that, they say that, because I don't think he's a culture vulture for sure. You know what I mean? I think he started out as a fan of the culture, and you can hear it in the lyrics,
Yeah.
always quoting, but at times, quoting 8 bars, that's a lot, but he's quoting, artists that, he grew up listening. And you could also tell that Kendrick comes from, he comes from this like lyrical, penmanship of the West, For me, when I hear Kendrick, for some reason, he's reminiscing of Corrupt,
Yeah.
So, and Corrupt to me had one of the best diss tracks ever, calling out names, right? So I think Kendrick won. He won the battle, or he won if it was a war between them, he won. But I think within the hip-hop, within the hip-hop universe, Drake still stands. Yeah.
That's it.
But if you're about the culture, definitely you're siding with Kendrick. If you're about the numbers, you'll be like, yeah, Kendrick had the better numbers this time around, but Drake usually has the better numbers. That's how people look at it. Yeah.
And what is a lesson we could learn from this battle alone? Like, if ever you were to break it down and just see, okay, what's helping the culture if we just had to put away or put aside the distractions or whatnot?
Well, it's healthy to battle. It's kind of like being on the basketball court. You go toe to toe. He's good, I'm good. We play. He got moves, I got moves. So that's not a bad thing. I think for me, the excitement was the fact that we allowed ourselves to not have any limits within hip hop for a few days. It was just drop your song and just let's hear it. Whereas it wasn't about is this a radio hit? It was really about, yes, I want to diss you, but I'm also coming at you with like, I just wrote this, I don't know, yesterday, last year, who knows? We don't know. However, it was just it was about the craft for some time, And I think that's kind of missing in the game nowadays, just really taking care of the craft itself. And Kendrick and Drake, they happen to be really good. People say Drake, has ghostwriters. If he does, in hip hop, listen, I don't know about other genre. In hip hop, it depends when I say hip hop. When I say as a lyrical, it's a no-no. But if you're like hip hop artist and you have hits, that's different too.
Right.
But usually it's a no-no. However, it's a different era. But I think it's good that we see people that are about the craft. People who actually care about having some sort of substance, something to say. Now dissing each other is not the best way to bring out the substance. But in that case, I think also you realize it's not always the person that has the best numbers that's the best at, whether it be, battling or, just, yeah, just, bringing the culture along.
Got it.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you do your best to read a book a month,
Yeah.
at least 12 books throughout the year.
Yeah.
What inspires you these days? And if you were to share at least 3 books that you read that shaped your mind.
Okay. Okay, good question. Let me see. Lately, I've been, I read Up From Slavery from Booker T. Washington. Souls of Black Folks, W.B. Du Bois. And, yeah, I've been going back to Philosophy and Opinions by Marcus Garvey. And what inspires me is just, it's like kind of like, as kind of like a hooper, you have to stay ready. So you don't only practice because you have games, right?
That's it.
You practice because that's the craft. You have to stay ready. So that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you say reading about their stories also impact or even helps you throughout your touring guides or even touring?
Yeah, to a certain extent, you read about, what they have to say. You read about, what the lessons that they learned, the mistakes that they made, the wins and losses. You read also about, their interactions with other people. You read about, their really, it's not to copy how they think. It's really to, you can paint a picture and, you paint a picture with different ideas, but, once you make these ideas yours, you get to, see life, through different lenses, and that's never a bad thing, So yeah, and also to inspire you to, keep pushing, because these people came from different eras. You look at someone like Booker T. Washington, he is born into slavery, so he writes about how, when he was freed from slavery. He writes about, not having a last name, and they ask him in school, "What's your name?" He's like, "Booker Washington." They're like, "Oh, Washington." He's like, "Yes, Washington, yes." So just the fact that, and he talks about speaking proper English as well, and then he talks about how he went to school, he didn't have any money, so he started as a janitor, and then he didn't have anywhere to sleep, so he slept on the bridge, and then but he ended up being the deans of that university. You see what I'm saying? So that's the thing. That's it.
Full
So
circle moment.
yeah, full circle moment. So you learn about life experiences, and you learn about also how you want to position yourself in regards to, what you learned, what you know, who you are, where you come from, and, and so on.
Interesting. What is the current goal that you've had for the past few days, months, years that you want to accomplish within the next 5 years, I would say?
Oh, current goal that I had, I have one of them I'm actually working on. I have my art exhibit, my first art exhibit. That's June 20th at
Congratulations, man.
Thank you very much. Yo,
amazing.
Bless up. At Darling Foundry on June 20th. I'm also like working on my first documentary. It's called Harlem of the North as well. Harlem of the North. So it's revisiting the history of jazz music in Montreal. It's along with Nkosi and Kevin Calix as well. Both of them, Nkosi directing, co-producing. Kevin is co-producing. I'm like screenwriting, co-producing as well. So we're all working together. Eventually I'd want to start working on my first book as well. Yeah.
Powerful. Do you have an idea where you want to go?
I have an idea. I think it'll be linked to the exhibition. My exhibition is called Black Summer '91. So eventually I'd want to start working on that. Yeah.
You said Black Summer in '91?
Yeah, Black Summer '91.
Could you tell us why you call it Black Summer '91?
Summer of 1991 was a series of events that happened, with black folks in Montreal. Not only the death of 4 brothers, from police violence, but also, just uprisings in different parts of the city, and again, the cultural context as well, skinheads, police brutality, gangs, street gangs, and just everyone, wanted to find their space. Everyone wanted to, belong to, the city or society in different ways. And, activism, a group of activists from the 80s and 90s, with ideologies, again, Afrocentrist ideology. So I just wanted to highlight that moment in history. And again, the 90s, the early 90s, I consider the late 80s up until I consider that the start of our modern era, right? So I just also wanted to highlight that. I feel like a lot of us are born in that era, but we don't really know much about it. You see, late
So you're gonna
80s, early
highlight
90s,
that.
exactly.
Okay.
So this was happening in Montreal, while we were babies on our way to be born.
It's a very, very powerful story. I mean,
Thanks.
there's a lot of ways you could go about it. Like you say, you
Yeah.
could create a book,
Yeah,
documentary. So
yeah.
just, you know where you're going with it.
Yeah,
with
for
it,
sure,
know.
for sure, for sure,
That's
for sure,
powerful.
for sure.
Could you tell us a way that you're currently connecting with the youth, and how do you find ways to empower them these days?
Oh, bless, man. I do workshops at different parts of the city. Recently I in Montreal North. At Côte des Neiges as well. I was doing Cinco for Saturdays in Côte des Neiges. Teaching history. We're doing workshops. We went on a trip to Quebec City with Webster as well.
Webster, the rapper, right?
Webster,
Well,
the
he used to be
rapper,
the rapper.
historian.
Yeah, shout
Rapper,
out to him.
historian. That's my guy right there. Shout out Webster. For me, it's really about, I go to schools too. I do walking tours of different neighborhoods. Like I said, I'm at Hochelaga, Côte des Neiges, Lachine, and DG. For me, it's always a way for them to, understand, okay, what's your place within the society? What do you know about the space in which you're living? And how do you occupy that space? And the way you occupy that space would also say a lot about, who you want to become in the future. But in order for you to, know who you want to become, how you occupy the space, you need to go at the foundation of who you are. And then you need to ask them, you need to ask questions to your parents. You need to, just something as simple as, maybe Googling your street, like the street name,
Right.
where you live or the neighborhood, and just to understand, okay, why do we live here? Why do people live in a certain neighborhood as opposed to another one? And, that's it. So.
Okay. Could you tell us working with the youth, what happens is that sometimes you learn a lot more about yourself, right?
For sure.
And could you tell us about a moment where, you work with the youth and you realize, they have a lot more than we do or we had in our times that keeps you hopeful of how things are going to be?
What keeps me hopeful about the youth is that at times when I engage them in certain conversation and I see that they react to what I say, in ways that, they question, because one thing about the youth, one thing about kids, the teenagers, they ask raw questions. As for us, adults, we're a bit more polished, so, we sugarcoat things.
Real talk.
Because, society, already has a toll on that, so, but for them, I see that, usually what I tell them, just by the questions that they ask, I'm like, okay, because, what I'm sharing with you in the moment that we're having, I want you to understand that right now at your age, you know more than I did when I was your age. Because what I'm conveying to you at your age, I didn't know.
Right.
So you're ahead of me. So if you think I know a lot, imagine what you will know when you'll be my age. That's why now you have the responsibility of not just holding on to the information, but doing something with it. And I think that what I learned with these kids is that what they make me learn about myself is that, man, they have like everything, that the way they do things, the way they approach things, it's just it's a different. It's the 21st century, man. It's the Jetsons, man. It's like it's the future. So I'm really hopeful that, they have the tools, they have the equipment to, do something and just to be in control of how they want the world to change. So I can't wait to take a step back and just sit back and see what these future adults have to offer.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's good, man. I mean, anything you would like to tell the public right now, like anybody's watching this at this very moment that's still confused about their identity, because we talked about identity, that's important, right?
Yeah.
Or in Montreal, somebody's not necessarily knowing how to really cultivate an identity. What would you say in a few words?
Well, you could start by the basics. You can question your parents. Question if you still have grandparents, you can ask them about their parents. If you have uncles and aunties, if you have cousins, you just be curious. Just ask the why we live where we live. Why do we, when did we move here? How? And then just be curious about, you know, overall knowledge in terms of, you know, keep growing, keep learning, keep elevating yourself, whether it be in business, whether it be in, you know, anything you want to do, anything you want to approach. Because I say culture, but, you know, when you approach a business, you know, that's a culture too. You have to understand the culture of this business that you're approaching. You have to understand, okay, how do we go about, you know, finding clients? How do we go about, you know, okay, yeah, just doing prospections and so on. So I think for me, it's first it starts with, you know, being curious. You have to cultivate your curiosity.
And sometimes by asking those questions, challenging your parents or your grandparents could help you create a name for yourself.
For
as
yourself,
an artist,
yeah.
as a DJ,
Yeah.
as an engineer. So,
Yeah. And you'd be surprised. Sometimes they tell you stories about, I don't know, some sort of ancestor, some you know, next to kid, and you realize, oh, he's just like me. Like, oh, I wish I would have met him. You know, I was like, yeah.
I'm as hard-headed as he was.
Exactly. He
Like,
was hard-headed in 1935, and I was like, here I am in 2024 doing the same things, you know. So
damn it, man.
that's it.
Man, it was a pleasure having you. Before
thanks for having
you leave, could you tell us how people could follow you, get a hold of you and whatnot?
Yeah, I'm on, you can go on my website, www.ritojoseph.com. My Instagram page, RJ_CHAM, or just type my name, Rito Joseph. Facebook, all the platforms, really, my name. And then, Darling Foundry, Fonderie Darling, June 20th, 20 juin 2024. We'll have an exhibition, an art exhibition. It's called Black Summer 91. And then next year, 2025, we have Harlem of the North documentary coming soon.
That's it.
Avec Natif TV, along with, you know, Nkosi, KK, etc. So, yeah, man, I can show some love, support, and then I can't wait to see what the future has in store. And I also want to thank you also for the work that you do, man. I see you've been, you know, you also been, you know, putting people on, and, you know, keep doing your thing too, man.
Appreciate that.
Bless up.
Last question. Do you get mistakes sometimes whenever you send whenever you had to send a resume or anything, people would see your name, they'd think you're Hispanic?
You know what? They wouldn't think I'm Hispanic, but I think I've been asked, why do I have an Italian name?
Right.
So that's funny. So people ask me why do I have an Italian name, and I tell them, it's like, yo, this is the name my parents gave me, man. My mother gave me this name, you know, she named me after herself, so that's it, man.
All right, man. One love, man. Appreciate you.
Respect.
Love.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
One time.
Another successful episode of Elevate the Mic, where we elevate the mindsets and the skill sets of individuals who are part of the hip hop community. Shout outs to the one and only Rito Joseph. Love.